Welcome to Even Tacos Fall Apart, a podcast where we get real and talk about the messy side of mental health. I'm MommaFoxFire, and today's episode is one I've been wanting to put out for a while. This was actually recorded back in 2020, which feels about 40 years ago at this point, but everything we talked about then is just as relevant now. My guest was Joy, who you can find online as Compassion and Consoles. At the time we recorded this, Joy had just earned her professional counselor license and was heading into a doctoral program focused on anxiety and trauma. She draws on her own mental health history to inform the way she works with people, and that comes through in every single thing she says. Our topic for this episode was trauma reactions and gaming. And I want to talk about that for a minute before we get into the interview and talk about why this matters. When most people hear the word trauma, they picture something extreme. A big car accident, a war, a violent assault. And yes, those things are totally traumatic. But trauma can be a lot broader than that. And that's something that Joy and I get into pretty directly. Anything that overwhelms your ability to cope, that just breaks past whatever internal resources you have, can have a traumatic impact. It doesn't have to meet some clinical threshold to be real, and it doesn't have to look the same from one person to the next. Research shows that somewhere between 10 to 20% of people who go through a major stressor develop acute stress disorder or lasting trauma reactions. But that also means a lot of people go through the same event and have very different outcomes. Things like whether you have a solid support system, whether you have other mental health stuff already going on, whether you had any control over what happened to you, all of that factors in. There's not a formula, but there are definitely patterns, and understanding those patterns can help you make sense of your own reactions or the reactions of someone you care about. One of the things I love most about this conversation is that Joy talks about trauma in a very real way, not just abstract. She talks about what it actually looks like, especially in kids. She spent years doing counseling in schools and family homes, and the stuff she shares about how trauma shows up as behavior and how that behavior often gets mislabeled as defiance or ADHD or just being a bad kid. It is equal parts infuriating and eye-opening. If you have kids in your life, or if you were a kid who got written off at some point, that part of the conversation, I hope, resonates with you. We also talk about gaming because this is who we are. Joy is a story-driven single-player gamer, and we get into how that kind of play can actually serve a real purpose when you are dealing with stress or anxiety. There's escapism in a dismissive sense, but sometimes you just need a low-stakes space where you have some control and you can just exist for a while. And sometimes a game punches you right in the feelings in a way that helps you process something you didn't even know you were carrying. There's also a really honest moment in this conversation where Joy talks about her own history with an eating disorder and how a counseling approach that was supposed to help her actually made things worse. It's a good reminder that getting help is not always a clean, straightforward experience, and that quality of care really is what matters. This episode is a little messy in places because it was a live stream and 2020 was, 2020, but the content is solid and Joy is brilliant. And I think you're going to get a lot out of it. All right, that's enough for me. Here's my conversation with Joy.
So sometimes I have people still muted. But I think we're good. We do have a queue open, so I can hear you both. Perfect. We do have a queue open. So if you have a question, !Q, and then you'll be able to put your question into the chat with that. And I'm also keeping a pretty good eye on the Twitch chat as well. My brain is like so scattered today. It's insane. But welcome.
As long as we're both in that space.
Yes, there you go. All right, so we'll just kind of open up with a softball question that sometimes is a little bit harder to answer actually, but that a lot of people have a good answer for. But that is, why do you do what you do and what interests you about mental health?
I guess it was kind of a long way to get here. I was thinking about it. And I do think, when you're in high school and they do they did questionnaires for us about what they thought we should do with our lives. And I do think something mental health or something counselor had come up at that point. And for whatever reason, whatever conception I had in my head, I was like, oh, no, I don't know about that. So
Kind of the aptitude test that they do.
yes. It was like career goals, career aptitudes. Yes. And it said, you'd be good doing this kind of like social type work. And I said, thanks, but no thanks. And I didn't do it. I don't know why. I feel like there was just something that I had, like a misconception, I think. So that didn't happen. And then a lot of things did happen that I didn't plan on. So I moved to America and I got a job in a completely different field just to sort of meet people. And then after doing that for about 4 years, I knew I wasn't doing something that I was passionate about. And so I went back to school to retrain, and that's where I got my training as a mental health and rehab counselor. And then I went and worked in the field for 2 years. I'm just leaving that now to go back to school and really focus on anxiety and trauma and go back. So I guess your question was more like why? Like why did I end up going back? I guess those aptitude tests were right in the end.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, I had some experiences myself with counseling when I was a teenager, and then some mental health like issues myself when I was a young adult, and my experience of counseling was not good. And I don't know if it was a conscious decision that I thought maybe if I can be the counselor I wanted, or if I could do better for someone else. I don't think that was a conscious decision, but maybe it was kind of in me a little bit. And I always thought that I was too much of an introvert, that I wasn't a people person. But I did find when I did work in the job that I had for 4 years, which was just in retail, it was just like a supervisor in retail. But the thing I loved most was working with people. And, if I could just help someone out in some way or do some good for someone, that's what made my day. But that wasn't my job. My job was to, take donations. I worked at Goodwill, take donations and sell things.
Yeah.
So I needed something that was more in line with what my skills were and what meant something to me, what was meaningful in my life. So that's how I ended up going back to school for that.
Yeah. And I'll back up a little bit. Like I said, I'm pretty scatterbrained today, so I didn't even do your bio, but you moved here. This is Joy, Compassion, and Consoles on Twitter. She moved here from the UK to answer Bite Mark's question. I'll let you answer that in a little bit more detail if you'd like, but to the USA in 2013 and has since obtained her master's degree and worked as a mental health professional. She's worked with children and their families to provide mental health counseling, crisis intervention, case management in school and community, and in the family and in family homes. She just got her professional counselor license and is starting a doctorate program in the fall to focus on anxiety and trauma. She's worked on publications addressing career needs for individuals with disabilities and assessing substance use disorders from a trauma-informed lens, and hopes to use her lived experience of mental health and negative experiences of counseling to provide a better service for others. So she's also graciously provided her email, which I will put here. So if anybody wants to get in contact with her, y'all are welcome to do that here. And then I'll also post her Twitter in just a minute. Do you want to talk about where you're from in the UK, since Bite Mark asked that question?
Yeah, sure. So I am from the north of England. Moved around a couple of times when I was a kid, but for the most part settled. It was kind of a rural area, like a rural town. My nearest city would have been Manchester, which is in the northwest of England. I would take the train in there, but kind of where I'm from is the county called Cheshire, so it's more rural, smaller, kind of the place that you could easily walk around to everywhere. Yeah, very different.
Yeah, I miss. So I visited Australia and I was in Brisbane for a little bit, and Brisbane's very walkable. Like you can walk wherever you want to and have access to everything, and their bus system is really well tied into everything too. So if you want to go outside of Brisbane, it's great. And then I went to Sydney, which is not, and then I came back here, which is also not. And it's just like, man, some places have it so much more together than Sydney and Fort Worth. Like those kinds of things I wish I wish that everywhere was really walkable, and it's just not, unfortunately.
Yeah, that was probably one of the biggest changes when I moved here. Because I'm not in a big city now, um, and the public transport isn't super great. But the first year that I lived here, I didn't have a driver's license. We didn't have the money for a car anyway, so there was no point getting a license. So I did manage to like figure out the bus system and make it work, but that was tough. There's some big distances in America.
Yeah. There are. I mean, you talk, especially in Texas. Like, I can talk about going to Dallas, and everybody thinks, oh, DFW, Dallas is really close. Like, we're away. Like, legit. And that's if you take the train, which is the fastest way to do it. Yeah, public transportation in America is spotty at best. That is no joke. That is no joke. I wish it was better.
Yeah, those are facts right there.
Yeah. So especially right now, a lot of people are trying to find things to do in and around their homes instead of going out and about for multiple reasons right now. What are some of your favorite at-home hobbies or self-care routines?
Well, I guess I would kind of split them into two. Like there are some things that I do that are more like active things that I do like to keep my brain creative and just to kind of keep things fulfilling for me. And then other things that I do that are more just to relax when you need nothing, when you don't need like stimulation, when you just need to switch off. I do like to play games. I'm not a huge fan of multiplayer games though.
Okay.
Yeah, I like story-driven, single-player, narrative-based. That's kind of more my thing. So I do play some games. I tell you one thing I really like to do as well is I like to draw, which that came about when I was not in a fulfilling job and didn't feel like I had a creative outlet, and that's something that was important to me to create something, to feel like I can produce something, not for anyone else, but just to keep working at something. Something
Yeah.
that's difficult for me, my self-care is if I feel like I'm stagnating. So I would draw. So I find that's pretty useful for me. Something that I do. I do enjoy a bubble bath, but sometimes I know I take those, so I avoid doing other things.
Fair.
Yes. Yes. I think something I've not been very good at, but is good for me, is somewhere between exercise, stretching, and yoga. I've done bits of yoga here and there, but once all the gyms closed, I don't need a gym to exercise. I could do it right here in the floor, but I've not been doing that. So
Right.
I've not been doing that. And you saw right before we joined the stream, my cat has come and sit right next to us again. Spending some time with my cat. When everything shut down, one thing I loved was usually I would be just go, go, go. I'd be go to work, come home, sleep, and then I'm out again. But just to sit and spend some time with this cute little boy, that makes me feel good. I think a lot of people probably get a lot of enjoyments from their many, many animals.
Yes. I was telling Joy that I have lots of animals, but I mean, really, the ones that I get the most enjoyment out of, my dog Bo. He's a Catahoula, and he's just the calmest thing in the whole world. And he'll just come and like flop onto the couch and lay there, and it's really sweet and comforting. And then honestly, I have asshole cats, so sometimes they're more obnoxious than not. Like they've started really fighting lately. And I think it's probably because we're just like, everyone's always here and there's no escape for them. And the poor things, like, I have one who's really not very social. She's very sweet. Her name is Slinky. I have one who is just very active. Fluffbutt. Yes. Fluffbutt. His actual name is Tyrion, but we call him Fluffbutt. He's very active lately. Like, he's gotten to where he'll hide around the corner and wait for one of the other cats and jump on them. So that causes a lot of havoc, but they're very soft and sometimes cuddly.
Those cats are the best. That is true.
There you go.
Yeah, right here, right with us. Oh, he's turned away. Rude. We've been worried that he might be lonely in some way. So when we're about to move, whenever I start the PhD program, so we're thinking a second one.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, sometimes that's a good thing and sometimes it's not.
No, my worst fear is that we've got these grand plans of making sure he's got a companion and that he's happy, and then they end up just hating each other.
Yeah. Well, and But I will say, like, there are lots of times where my two cats, you saw the chair that's over there with the blue blanket on it. They'll just lay on that couch together or on that chair together, and it's adorable. Like, they fall asleep. And then there was the other night, my son was asleep in his bed, and I went in there to check on him. And Slinky, the one who doesn't like people, was snuggled up with him, and his arm was over her, and like they were both just asleep. It was adorable. It was really cute. So cats are good. I'm not saying that they're bad at all. But my favorite, like,
yes, my first animal. We were never allowed any as kids, but my husband had loads of cats, so we finally got one. My
go
first
talk
cat.
to your
I love
sister
it.
if you need something. Go talk to your sister if you need something.
Hi.
Speaking of turkeys.
No.
But yeah, my dog is like the most calming thing in the whole world. So that's always good. Bite Mark has a question. She says, what is or are your favorite narrative single player games?
Well, this is useful for me because right in front of me, I can see my games on the shelf.
There you go.
So probably the last one that I played that was given to me was Detroit Become Human, was probably the last
Oh, yeah.
game that someone got for me. I very much enjoyed that. Some of the writings and is a bit on the nose. It's not particularly nuanced in the way it deals with some of its themes. Having said that, I did very much enjoy it. Prior to that, probably Uncharted 4 was top of my list. Love that game. Let's see, what else do we have over there? Some of them are open world. I'm not going to lie, I did get a little bit burnt out on open world games. They all kind of felt the same with a different skin.
Yeah.
A little bit. But I did very much enjoy Witcher 3. And probably the first game, so I didn't have consoles for a long time. Maybe, I want to say like 4 years ago, I got a PlayStation 3 because I was like, I'm a grown up now, I can do that. If I want a PlayStation, I can do that. And I think Far Cry 3, I want to say one of the Uncharted games, The Last of Us, very excited for number 2.
Yeah.
There was like, I think maybe BioShock or Dishonored. I never did finish BioShock. Ones that have more combat than anything.
Yeah.
I like combat's okay. Here's where I fall down. So Tomb Raider I played a lot as a kid, and it's quite special to me because I would play with my brother. So we would get the walkthrough guides and we would sit next to each other, and if there was any exploration or backtracking, I would do that. And as soon as there was some combat or an enemy coming up, we would switch.
I like it.
In some of these newer Tomb Raiders, so I do have all 3 of the new Tomb Raider reboots. And in some of them, you drop into an area and then combat begins, and you have to finish the combat to get through the area. I would play on a normal difficulty, but what I'm really bad at doing is I would drop into the area, my anxiety spikes, and I quit the game and I walk away. So whenever I go back to it, it's always the really difficult combat.
Yeah.
And I've forgotten all the controls and I have
Yep.
to go back into it.
Yeah.
So that wasn't really relevant to your question, but
No, that's totally fine. Yeah,
I love... Go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, there are a lot of situations where I don't mind combat, but the ones where it's required to move on, somehow I'm awful at those.
Yes, that's too much pressure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But I really did love the Uncharted series. I really just loved the characterizations in that thing. That was my solid top 4 for a long time. I do love management style games as well. I love Roller Coaster Tycoon, 2 Point Hospital, Age of Empires 2, just not playing multiplayer.
I love Age of Empires 2. Multiplayer is awful.
Yes. Recently, that's what my brother and I were playing the other day, and we would play against the AI. That's as far. I played one multiplayer game, and that was enough for me.
Yeah. It's a good one, though. It's a good one.
I don't need that pressure in my life.
I know Bite Mark really likes things like Roller Coaster Tycoon, and we grew up playing things like SimCity and SimAnt, and there was another, maybe it was Roller Coasters. Now I don't remember what it was, but lots of those were a lot of fun. And it's like, I don't know, there's something really satisfying.
Someone said something about the Dishonored series. I'd be interested to know about 2, because I played 1, but I didn't get 2, and I think it was on sale when I checked the other day. So if you recommend that, let me know.
Yeah, it sounds like she really liked it, so I'm guessing she would. Yes, I'm a grown up now. I can do that. Yeah, I love that too. I think everyone who moves out of a parent's home and then goes into their own and then has that first realization of like, I can do this. I'm an adult now. As long as it's not, I can buy a whole chocolate cake and eat it all at once, because then you're going to get sick.
That's a fact. Yes. You do it once and then you learn.
Yes, right. No kidding. I can have ice cream for dinner every night. No, not good. It's not good.
Yeah.
So, do you have a serial killer or true crime story that fascinates you?
I have to say yes, because it's probably what I've watched most on Netflix.
Would you have a favorite Netflix series of this? Because I'm always looking to add more true crime stuff to mine.
I think I'm in the middle now of the Unabomber one. I don't think I've quite finished that. There's a few low-key ones that I tend to play over and over. Like if I just need some background noise, I'm always playing that Fire Festival one, which isn't really serial killer, but crime. I'm going to lump it in with crime.
It's fine.
The Rachel Divide, that's kind of, sometimes I'll put that on the back one. That's fascinating. I know I've seen a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
But usually those real heavy ones, I'm like, okay, now I've seen them once. I'm going to need to take some space to process this. There's enough
Right.
trauma in the world, and now I'm consuming it
Yeah.
on my television in my spare time.
Yeah, no kidding.
But yeah, I do love those. One thing
Yeah.
I'm really bad at is waiting for something to be out for a very long time before getting into it. So like once all the hype's died down, then I'm like, okay, now everyone said this was really good 3 years ago. I should probably watch it. And then I wonder why no one's talking about it because it came out 3 years ago.
Right. Yeah, I have the problem where if I know that there's going to be a certain number of, not series, a certain number of like releases, I'll wait until they're all out or until they're all about to come out and then watch all of it. Because I don't want to wait. Okay. Because then I feel like I have to watch it all again.
Do you have any favorites?
If I'm looking for something background kind of, I'll put on Criminal Minds just like over on a screen or up on the TV or something and just let it play. There are some more serious ones like Mindhunter. Making of a Murderer was really good as well. That was a good one. Yeah, that one was a good one. It started off a little bit slow, but then it really kind of picked up there towards the end. I grew up watching things like, this is not in any way true crime or anything, but it is crime, sort of. I grew up watching Matlock and Murder, She Wrote.
Okay.
So those are like my crime show background kind of things. So anything with a little bit of humor is always good. What's the one show kind of like Criminal Minds, but she's always wearing pigtails and she works in the morgue?
Is that? No, it's not NCIS.
Maybe.
Is it? I feel like
it's Abby. Yes, NCIS. Yes,
okay.
yes. You're right. And Diagnosis Murder. Yes, there you go. Bite Mark said they improved the mechanics of the first DH2, but kept the play how you want feel. That's good. And SimTown is the one I was forgetting, which is funny because I really liked that one better than Sim City.
I like that they said you keep like the play how you want feel. It's interesting because I loved Uncharted 4 so much. It didn't matter to me that you didn't have much choice like in how you go through the game. It's so linear. I just loved the characters. I love going on the journey with the characters. And then once I played Detroit, the chapters I loved the most in that game were the ones where you had choice. And then I loaded Uncharted back up again. And I'm like, oh, this is it? Like, you just walk down the corridor. There's no, like, moral dilemma or anything along.
Right? Yeah, that's a different, little bit of a different feel. But I think similar to, like, the crime shows, sometimes you want that just thing you can kind of put on and it's a little bit mindless versus the things where you have to face a moral dilemma and make a choice.
Yeah. Now, I know there's a few series that I started, I just never got to the end of. There was one, The Keepers.
I
want
don't
to
know
say
that
it was
one.
The Keepers or something about something Keepers or Keepers something. But that was very heavy and covered a lot of abuse. I think after a couple of episodes of that, I, for myself, had to step away for a little bit.
Yeah.
And the one on Madeleine McCann was very interesting to me because that was like a really high profile British family that still in the media. So that one was a really good one that was pretty comprehensive.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen either of those. So I'll have to look those up. at some point. So getting into kind of more of your professional expertise level type stuff. So 10 to 20% of adults who experience an extreme stressor or stressful event develop simple acute stress disorder or have trauma reactions. Are there some risk factors that make an individual more likely to be traumatized than others?
Right, because several people could go through the same experience and not everyone would have the same reaction.
Mhm.
So, probably one of the biggest ones that we see would be social support, whether you have it or whether you don't. So, there's been a lot of studies where they would straight up ask people, what is it that helped you get through this particular time in your life? And the one thing that they always have in common is at least one adult, especially if the person went through something when they were younger, at least one supportive adult, whoever that was. It doesn't have to be a family member, but it could be someone that they knew supported them that was safe, right? Because if you're going through trauma, what it's telling you is the world isn't safe. Like you are not safe to exist. Something about this experience is not is just the world isn't a good place. But if you
Right.
have at least one person that's there as a support, that in itself can just be a huge protective factor for being able to get through something and not to have some really impactful symptoms afterwards. And even if you do have that, there are some other things that, might be around for you. So do you have other mental health diagnoses that might make it more difficult? So, for example, if you were someone with pretty high anxiety and the way that you tried to cope with that anxiety and manage it for yourself was to avoid a lot of things, that might be a risk factor because then you would be avoidant after your trauma and not be able to process that very effectively. So that's one way that you could see how another type of diagnosis or experience might make it more likely that you then experience some kind of trauma reaction. You then have other things like, you know, biology and genetics. If you have a really long family history that just makes it more likely. The more things that you have on top of each other makes it, more likely that you might then experience some trauma symptoms, but the big one is going to be social support.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big thing that we've talked about before is just kind of one way to increase your resilience is to find what social support there is in your community. And whether that is like one-on-one with someone, but finding someone who you can confide in, I think is a really important thing. And whether that's a partner or someone who went through the same thing. Is it recommended to talk to people who went through the same event? Or is that something that you should find like a group that wasn't the exact same event, if that makes sense, to talk things through with?
You mean like a support group?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Finding some people that have something in common with you can help you feel less alone. Now, one thing you might have heard whenever there's like advice on like how you can validate people, one thing they'll always encourage you not to do is to jump immediately to your own experiences. So, if someone else has had a bad experience with a counselor, my first response is not going to be, oh, me too, because that's invalidating. It's saying, oh, well, we're here to talk about your experience, but let's actually talk about mine. But a counselor-client relationship is really different than
Mhm.
a friendship or a support group. So if you're just having that social support, absolutely.
Yeah, and I will say that it's really hard not to do that, like, because one of the things that, I see especially on forums, like the Heart Support Wall and everything, where it's just peer-to-peer kinda stuff, is you wanna immediately say, "Hey, I can relate to you," but it's hard to say that without telling whatever your part of the story is, and so it can be really difficult to not jump in and say, like, "I've experienced that too, here's what worked for me," kinda thing, and have it come off and be received the way that you're intending, you know?
Absolutely. Because I don't think when anyone ever says those kind of things, it's meant to say that I can relate to you, I can connect with you, I can share this moment with you. I understand
Yeah.
you and what you're going through is the intention.
Yeah, exactly. So it's difficult.
And I think something else that can really be helpful for people is if you're able to find some control either during or in the aftermath of whatever experience it is that you're going through. The less control someone has or feels that they have, that's going to make it more likely for you to find it really difficult to have resilience through it.
Yeah.
Because then you're not an agent, things just happen to you.
Yeah, and as someone who loves control, that's really hard too.
Too much control.
Yeah. Yeah. So what types of traumatic events typically cause psychological trauma, and what are some common steps taken following a traumatic event?
Well, I'll say here that the DSM, which I'm sure you have all like brought up and looked at before, and it's got a very narrow view of trauma in it, which I don't agree with. And it's a fallible book. It it's had awful thing. Homosexuality was in it, which is just ridiculous, and
And
gaming disorder, and
it changes all the time.
yeah, exactly. So the reason I say that is because yes, it is the publication that we go off to make our diagnoses, but I'm not the only one that disagrees with its categories. And some of them are so arbitrary in the way that they made it into the book. So I say that because according to the book, basically threatened either loss of life, threatened loss of life, too many L's, sexual assault, you can count those as traumatic. Well, to limit people's traumatic experiences to that list is completely inadequate, I would say. So anything that you experience that overwhelms your ability to manage or cope, not just in the moment, but chronically, something that just overwhelms your internal and external capacities, I'm going to go ahead and call that trauma. It could be one particular incident or something that's chronic and ongoing and see, there's that thing of unable to escape. If you're unable to escape it and you don't have any control over it and it happens over and over and over again, of course that can be traumatic. It doesn't fit the definition in the book, but I would say that counts, right?
Yeah.
Because all of these, whether it's just those definitions in the book, they impact you. They impact your brain. They impact your physical chemistry. So how can we not call it traumatic? I feel, I don't know whether I fully answered the question there, but I feel pretty strongly about this. It annoys me every time that I have to give a diagnosis based on trauma, and technically it doesn't fit the definition, but how invalidating is that to people's trauma?
Right. Well, and also, I mean, it's a book. Like, you can't put every human experience into a book either. So, of course, sometimes things are going to fall outside of whatever is in the book and maybe still fit some of the symptoms that you're experiencing. But yeah, definitely. Also, it's written by humans. So there's that.
Also infallible.
Yes, right. The DSM has plenty of problems. It also supports a lot of different things. So it's helpful in some ways. Sometimes it's also hurtful. But yeah, I mean, talking about the book being wrong doesn't necessarily mean that it's everything in it is wrong, or that something that you find outside of that book is wrong. Like, it's not an end all be all, if that makes sense. Sometimes the book is wrong, doesn't matter what book. Exactly, yes.
Sorry.
Oh no, Bite Mark just said sometimes the book is wrong, doesn't matter what book. Yeah. Yep. True.
True facts going on in your chat. But I do think some people do find it helpful to have a label. And for some people, that's not helpful. But for some people, I've seen that it has been, because it helps explain things a little bit. What they thought was just me going crazy or me not being able to cope. Yeah. Having a label makes it identifiable why I'm experiencing the world that I am.
So what are some
as much as I dislike those labels?
Yeah, right. Yeah. What are some common steps that are taken following a traumatic event?
Well, it might very well depend on what the event is, the circumstances under what happened, who it happens to. For example, if they were a minor or an adult, and exactly, is this, for example, you would go about a interpersonal trauma very differently than a natural disaster, for
Mhm.
example. So what you'd want to make sure, I'm sure people have probably heard of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah, I think
Um,
we've talked about it before, but if you want to go ahead and kind of give just a brief explanation in case we have somebody in here who has not heard of it before.
yeah, I mean, if you've all heard of it, that's great. But basically, it's just like the hierarchy of needs, and you can't fulfill ones above it before you have more basic ones fulfilled. So in something like a trauma, they have a thing. If anyone's not heard of it, you can just Google psychological first aid. There you go, you're nodding, which is just a model of how you can approach people who have been through a traumatic event. So one of the first things that once you've made an engagement with that person and their psychological first aid, there's like a really good, it's really long, but there's a really good document. I think it's on the I want to say the National Trauma website. I can always just send the link if you need it. But they talk about a lot of that stuff with the validation language, like how you approach someone. But basically the first thing they go through once you've approached someone, it's like your physical needs first. Like you can't go exploring, processing, building insight. If someone's just lost their place to sleep, they need a place to sleep first and
Right.
foremost. So that's going to be like the first place you can go. And then after that, you're going to find out what their needs are. Like if they don't have any social or community supports, can you help them with that? Can you link them to something if they need it? If they need it. And then it's only after that. It looks like someone has it. Yeah. It looks like, I don't know if that's what I'm thinking of, but it looks like it's going to be the exact same information. I love it. Oh no, I lost my train of thought. I was so excited by that link. Yeah. And then afterwards, after you have your basic needs met and you have some supports in place, that's when you could even think about, is now the time for something like therapy? Do I need a higher level of care, like depending on what my own symptoms are and what my needs are right now? But that wouldn't necessarily be where you start.
Yeah. Thank you for that shorter link. I appreciate that. I just copied the link as I had it and I was like, hold on, that's not
Yeah,
good. That is too long.
NCTSN. That is definitely the one I was thinking
Yes.
of.
Perfect. Good. So, are there symptoms of acute stress disorder or a trauma reaction more generally that people might not recognize as symptoms of a trauma reaction?
So I love this question because I worked a lot with families in their home and then in an elementary school as well. Probably the biggest thing I saw would be children who had been through traumatic events display their symptoms through their behavior, and it just wasn't seen as a trauma reaction. So this question really speaks to me in that way. So, if a child has been through something traumatic and then not yet they like we said, the world is a scary place, right? They don't have any reason to trust you. They don't have any reason to trust me or any other adult in this place. So they're not ready to talk, and maybe they don't even have the skills to talk yet. They don't know the words and they don't know that they're safe. So they use their actions instead, right? They can't use their words, so we speak with our actions instead. So that might look like things like, if I don't feel safe in this room, in this classroom, I have to leave. I can't stand being here any second longer. I'm going to run out of the classroom. Or I'm so angry at something, but I can't tell you what I'm angry at, so I'm going to start ripping up this paper instead. Things like that, which gets labeled as bad behavior. And I hate it so much,
Yep.
but it does. So I think especially in children, that kind of behavior isn't always seen as a trauma reaction. Their sense of self and their ability to cope has just been overwhelmed, and they don't know what to do, and they're just going to act. And you can see they're distressed, right? If someone's running through the school, if someone's ripping things off, if someone's punching the wall, someone who is perfectly happy with their life, typically you're not going to see that from them. So
Right.
you can see the distress, but it's not always linked to distress. What is this kid going through that's caused them to feel so hurt and so angry? That's something that I would definitely say isn't really seen as a lot of bad behavior is just labeled as such and not connected to what could be a trauma reaction.
Yeah. Is it fairly common for kids who have gone through a trauma or are experiencing a continuing trauma to be labeled with ADHD or with ODD or something like that?
Yes. Cannot stand the conduct disorder diagnoses.
Yeah.
Can't say I've ever met anyone that's been given a conduct disorder diagnosis that wouldn't be more adequately explained by trauma or anxiety, which is probably why I'm feeling the need to go and focus more closely on those two. I absolutely would say that. And I also notice even sometimes when someone does get their trauma or their anxiety identified, that sometimes you'll even see like you said, like an ODD type diagnosis tacked on. And I'm not sure what purpose that really serves. You know, in the book, it always says at the end, if it cannot be adequately explained by something else, by another diagnosis. So if we
Yeah.
know that trauma or we know that anxiety is the fuel, is what's causing these behaviors, why are we then adding an additional behavior diagnosis? Yeah, I'm on board with you on this one.
Yeah. I mean, I would think so one of my bonus sons who turned 18 just graduated high school today. Yay! He had
Congratulations!
yeah, right. He had both an ODD and an ADHD diagnosis that just magically cleared up after he started going to counseling, and it's like I think he just needed to talk through some things with
Yes.
someone who was safe enough to listen to, and it drives me crazy that, of course, not that most people can access any of his psychological records or anything like that, but that he has that with him. You know, he has that with him, and he was aware of all of this. Like, he knows what he was diagnosed with. And so I think that in some ways, I feel like that can be hurtful because then they're treating that versus the actual problem. And honestly, they get treated differently in school too.
Yeah, 100%. And you're absolutely right. I mean, if someone told me that the problem with me is that I can't deal with authority, that I'm just defiant and oppositional, I mean, what does that say about me? How do I feel that I have any power to even improve that? I've already been labeled as a kid by the adults. You're bad. You cannot listen to grown-ups.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get so angry at this. I struggle to
I do
speak,
too.
but
I do too.
I agree with you 100%. And we hold them to such a high standard. We hold
Yeah.
them to standards that we don't hold ourselves to.
Hmm. Well, and I
You
mean,
know, if
yeah, just school in general holds everyone to a high standard because it's the only time that you're expected to know everything and be an expert at everything in your entire life. The only time you're expected to know every single subject is while you're in school. And so there's that threshold of expectation, and then to throw someone who's struggling with some sort of trauma reaction or something they need to work through, or maybe they have anxiety and they're not being treated for it, like all of that is like layered on top of it, and it's just this giant pile of crap that then eventually no one wants to deal with, and they just shove them into an alternative school, and they're like, well, you have to be perfect to get out of this. It's like, that's not right. That's not teaching anything.
yes, absolutely. I see so many kids who just have their self-esteem destroyed
Yeah.
because as far as they know, I'm a bad kid. They've picked that up, whether people have said those words out loud or not. That's how they think every grown-up views them. And if
Yeah.
every grown-up views you as bad, what can you possibly do? You
Right.
might as well give up.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I know we kind of got a little bit off track there, but I'm passionate about that as well. Like, I think it's just,
Yeah,
there's a lot of things that are complete bullshit, and that's one of them. So,
it's a valid point. Yeah.
yeah. So, are there any treatment methods that were used in the past for treating a psychological trauma that have proven not to be as effective? We talked about the DSM changing all the time. So, kind of same question for treatments. Is there anything that's changed over time?
Yes. So we used to do awful, terrible things to people that would just traumatize them further. One thing that is still, I still think some people do teach this and probably do receive it in therapy would be like thought stopping, which I'm not a fan of. I'm trying to read I'm trying to read chat as it comes up. I get
That's
too
okay.
excited and distracted. I need to focus. So, thought stopping. Yes, I'm not a fan of thought stopping. a lot of people have heard of the the white bear experiment, and it comes up a lot like in different kind of ways now, which it basically, so the original experiment was, if you, I'm going to mess this up now that I have to say it, but if you show a group of people pictures of polar bears and ask them not to think about polar bears versus giving them permission to think about polar bears, basically the point is, if you are told not to think about them, you will think about them more. And if you were then given permission to, I believe, the amount that you think about them spikes. Like you have like a recoil. So basically you think about stuff more, the more you try to repress it. Thought stopping is quite controversial. I think it is not really in fashion anymore. There's a lot more like focus on like mindfulness, which I do like, which is more like just noticing your thoughts and thinking of them. Like right now I'm having the thought that, like for example, I'm having the thought that I am worthless. It's just a thought. You can think that. It doesn't impact who you are in any way. It doesn't have any impact on your actual worth. It's just a thought. Whereas thought stopping would tell you to identify that, to stop that, in other words, to repress it and to try and change it, which could actually increase those kinds of thoughts.
Right.
So that's kind of going out of fashion a little bit right now. That's one of the more recent ones. I mean, we used to just do awful, awful things to people, cut them open, drill into their head, and put them in isolation, which is absolutely what you need to do when someone's been through trauma. It's just isolate them even more, of course.
Yeah, I mean I've been really a bigger fan of not dieting at all, like especially with a teenage daughter who is very conscious of everything that happens around her. Like I don't want her to get that thought in her head that she should always be dieting. So, and it's like the chocolate chip cookie when you're on a diet. I can't have a chocolate chip cookie. I want a chocolate chip cookie. I can't have a chocolate chip cookie. I want a chocolate chip cookie. Where if you are doing kind of mindful eating, you're like, okay, well, I'll have one chocolate chip cookie. And then instead of having the whole bag of chocolate chip cookies, you've had just one, where if you had repressed that for a long, long time, you might just eat the whole bag. Not that I've ever done
Yeah.
that.
No, who would ever do that?
Me.
It's interesting that you bring up food because, I mean, if you don't mind me sharing for a
Go ahead.
second,
Yeah.
I did have, so one of my mental health concerns that came up, I've always been pretty anxious, but when I was around like 18, 19, it came out through like an eating disorder. I say like it was an eating disorder.
Yeah.
And I mean, truthfully, this is probably where part of my disagreement with thought stopping came in. Actually, one of the counselors I had that I didn't agree with recommended thought stopping when I was a kid. So, but I would use that to basically assist my eating disorder. You know, if I thought I wanted something to eat, I would try and use thought stopping to stop it. Now, good for me that thought stopping doesn't really work.
Yeah.
Just increased my thoughts of wanting to eat, which made me even more anxious because I was thinking it more, which I was trying to repress, and it just reinforces itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it really does. Like Mark said, I went to ISS in school suspension for a few days, and it was the best for me. Give me all the work so I can do it and then just read, and no one be upset about that score. I recognize it isn't the typical experience. And I will say, ISS is different from alternative school. Like ISS, in school suspension, is not a good thing. I understand it might be, easy for some to deal with. It's not a great thing. I would rather them have ISS for an extended period of time than be sent to an entirely different facility for alternative school, in my experience with my kids.
Yeah, and I think there's a few different experiences of in-school suspension that I had seen, and some had kind of like a similar experience where it was almost like a break. Like the classroom is overwhelming. It's
Yeah.
so loud. I'm overloaded with stimulation. There's people in here I don't get along with. I get to exist in a quiet space and complete my work. And that's wonderful. Like we should be, if that's what kids need, like if you really are overwhelmed and that's what you need, absolutely. It's interesting that you bring it up like that as well, because our kids were very aware of that. And so so I worked in a school, but I didn't work like for the school. I wasn't a school employee. But ISS was tried to, I guess they wanted it to be a punishment of some kind. So, it was always applied inconsistently, and it didn't achieve what they wanted it to,
Yeah.
but it had a purpose. Like this person in the chat said, if really the reason that you're acting out is because you're overwhelmed in classroom, wouldn't it be great if you could have space to go to and complete your work
Yeah.
and calm down and regulate. So they actually, in the school I worked in, they did try and start doing that too. Like the in-school suspension room had like a quiet area that they could, so if they thought like I'm just getting overwhelmed in class, I can go down and use it. So there was a bit of a shift, but if we could do more of that, that
Yeah.
would be good.
Well, I know now, and they did not have this when I was growing up. Like in-school suspension was supposed to be a punishment. That was it. There were no other options. I don't even think we had a school counselor. We had like a guidance counselor who would help you pick what studies you were going to do, but I don't think we had an actual like mental health counselor. But now the thing that I like is that once the students aren't in the alternative school anymore, they have what's called a BIC room, at least here, and it's behavioral intervention something. Maybe classroom. Maybe it's just behavioral intervention classroom. And it was if you felt like you were having a shit fit day or something, like you were super anxious or whatever, you could voluntarily go to the BIC room and just do your work there. And like it was a much more one-on-one experience. They had a mental health professional in there. I think that they did work for the school, but it was more of an option versus a punishment. So I think that has improved, but they do still have ISS and the alternative school as well. So behavioral intervention centers, maybe, but it was just a room in his school, but it helps that I didn't have strong friendships, that I was missing them. For social people, I imagine it's much more of a punishment. That's a good point, too. It would have been a much more of a punishment for me. ISS would have been. But
yeah.
I was also super obsessed with not disappointing people. So I think that would have been more than the social aspect of it. Because I can make friends anywhere. I can make friends in an ISS classroom. Give it to me. But then having to tell my parents that I got sent to ISS, like I would have like not done well with that. Hey, Waddles, how are you today? So yeah.
Yes. I noticed, I mean, for us, it was maybe a little different because there wasn't a lot of space. Oftentimes, if people had ISS, they were kind of in the corridor or just in a corner or something.
Mm,
I think kids that really needed structure to their day and suddenly were stuck in a corridor without any instruction, any structure, and told just work independently as an 8-year-old for 2 hours, that's not going to happen.
yeah. Yeah, that's not good. So what are some common misconceptions you hear from clients about trauma reactions?
Let me know if I'm answering this incorrectly, but it makes me want to jump straight back to behaviors in school is probably the biggest one. So, for example, there was one client that I had diagnosed with PTSD, and it seemed pretty obvious to me. I mean, they'd been through some really awful traumatic events, and they were so young, and they would be doing, leaving the classroom, pacing the halls, punching things, et cetera, et cetera. And then I heard a comment from an adult that basically, there's nothing emotionally wrong with them. This was just a choice. They were just choosing. That's basically it. They were choosing to be bad. They're choosing not to listen to me. They're choosing not to do my work. They're choosing to run away from. They're choosing to disrespect me is a big one. Why are these children not respecting me? Is a big one.
Because it's all about them, right?
Yes, that's a big one. So the misconception is that all of the behavior is a choice. And I don't mean to disempower people by saying that it might not necessarily be, because we want to empower people that, yes, you do have agency, you can make changes in your own life, but that's not necessarily how they're experiencing it. They're not thinking, man, I'm just going to disrespect this teacher right now. I'm going to rip up my work and I'm going to make a choice to leave this room, and then they're going to do it because they want to be bad. That's just not how they're experiencing their life. So one of the biggest misconceptions is their behavior equals disrespect to me, and that it's a choice. So I see that because it's just not being recognized for what it is, which is just distress, which
Yeah.
is just a cry for help in the
Right.
moment. That's probably the biggest one. And I don't know if this is necessarily the same. I feel like this is a different question, but another big misconception I see is that either counselors or people who are working with the kids or the families, that there's something wrong with the kid and that you're going to fix it. That's probably another big misconception that I hear.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can tell you when my 6-year-old is being willfully defiant about something, but I also understand that he is not thinking, I'm really going to piss mom off with this one. Like, that's my goal right now. No, it's that he doesn't want to put away his clothes. Like, he would rather watch a show than put away the clothes. So you make, there's
Same.
things, there's things you can do to make that choice easier, like turning off the TV, turning off the computer or whatever. And then things like saying, no, you don't get to eat your dinner at 9 o'clock at night after you've already gone to bed. And I literally told you that if you didn't eat dinner, you weren't getting anything else to eat. Like, you can make the choices really clear for them. But you still have to understand that, like, he's not thinking, I'm going to come out here to my mother after she's already told me not to get out of bed. She's already told me I'm not getting anything else to eat. And watch what this does to her when I ask her for food. Like, I know that's not his thought process, but I feel like a lot of people, especially in school, really think that that child is doing it specifically to spite them.
I think from one thing I saw from the parents that I worked with who had been traumatized was a lot of avoidance, so like not engaging with the school, not going to school, not going to parent teacher days, not meeting with the counselor, not do anything, just avoiding contact, avoiding conflict, avoiding anything.
Sounds
And
like my
that's very
ex.
different. There you go. I know. Every time I learn something new, I'm thinking of people in my family and I'm like, nope, they're my family. I need to stop. Yes. But I say that's also something that people can get quite judgmental about. And I understand it too. If you're a teacher and you can see a child and you want them to do well and you want the parent to be engaged and you want to have a conversation with the parent and discuss something and just help this child along and the parent doesn't answer you and never meets you, I understand how frustrating that can be. I was so fortunate that I got to be with the families in the home and kind of learn more about the whole dynamic and not just what's going on for the child, but what did the parents go through as they were kids and to get them to where they're at. So that's another misconception I see, that people often are labeled just lazy or that they don't care about their kids because that's what you see, but it might not be true. They might just have, for example, such high anxiety they don't want to come into school. Maybe they had traumatic experiences in a school when they were kids. Why would they want to willingly walk into another one? So
Oh, I didn't start thinking, oh, this is going to piss someone off until I was in my 20s and now I make it art. I love it. I can see you doing that. Mhm.
said those thoughts you have when you're like, man, I don't want to disappoint someone.
Yeah, right. No, that's me.
I relate to that.
That's my thinking. I recognize that's not everyone's thinking.
They say they now make art. I mentioned like doing art at the beginning as well. It's interesting. For me, I think it was more being more flexible with myself instead of being so rigid. Because I only do art for myself and getting to the point where if I make a mistake, it's okay. That was a journey.
Yeah. I think he was talking about that he makes pissing people off now in art.
That is hilarious. Oh my gosh. I know a few people like that actually.
Mhm.
I'm too anxious to do that. I would be thinking about it all day. I'd be like, oh man, did I piss them off? I didn't mean to.
No, I couldn't do that. I'm a terrible person. You are not a terrible person, Joe.
Terrible person. Nope. I don't agree with that.
Vows.
That's what I hear from the kids. I'm a bad person. No, I do not agree with it.
You're not a bad person, Joe. Just because you piss some people off, sometimes purposely, that doesn't mean you're a bad person. So what resources are available to those who struggle after experiencing a trauma? And kind of, since we're talking about schools also, do schools generally have services available to students? And are they like offered or do they typically have to seek them out?
Well, it's difficult to answer just because every school is different. My work was mostly in an elementary school. Some have, for example, social workers, which mine didn't, which would be fantastic. Now, 2 years ago, they didn't have a voluntary program. They just had a school counselor, and in some schools, they're more like just vocational counselors. So, like we said right at the beginning, like, what are your career goals? What do you want? What do you want to
Yeah.
be when you grow up?
Right.
So that's what a vocational counselor could do, but your school counselor should have lists of all of the community resources. Ours were really involved in even things like CYF and all the things that they could connect you to, children, youth, and families. They had all of their connections to the local resources, to the local mental health resources, which if you had a school social worker, I presume they would have that too. They did roll something out in the school I was in where they sent out a letter to parents that said, we're now going to have a counselor in the school, which wasn't me, but they had a counselor in the school. And if you sign this, your child, like you were saying with the BICs, it was basically the same kind of system. You could just excuse yourself from class and go down and talk to someone, which was amazing. So if they have something like that, that was fantastic. Some have other programs. I was part of that. So our program was we could see them in school, but also at home and all those kinds of things. The only thing that you might run into is if you are under 14, or at least where I live, if you're under 14, you have to have a parent consent for you to be in treatment.
Yeah.
So if the parents didn't sign that letter to come back, the child would not be able to go down and use the BIC room.
Yeah.
So in that case, they could still go and see the school council though.
Yeah, I had to sign a consent form for both my daughter and my son. Whenever we told them that we were going to get a divorce and everything, I had to sign consent forms for both of them to be able to go and see, even just talk to the counselor kind of one-on-one. So, which I did, and it was fine. And I don't think my 6-year-old ever acted out, and then COVID happens.
Yeah, and then COVID happened. That
Right.
could be a footnote on so many things right now.
I know. 2020 has just been such a shit show.
It just.
It really has. I'm a critical person. When I walk into a new building, the first thing that catches my attention is something wrong. That's okay. You're a contrary person, which is not the same thing as bad. That is very true. Contrary is not the same as bad. Grumpy is also not the same as bad. So, personality trait versus an inherent thing of who you are.
Right. And that's more of a skill of being able to notice so many things. Like you walk into an environment and you take in your entire environment. You're looking out for things that might not be safe. You're looking out for things that I need to keep an eye on. I mean, that makes sense to me.
See? There you go. See? Perfect. So you've worked with kids and families doing crisis intervention and providing mental health services. So in your experience, does a traumatic experience have a relationship with other mental health related diagnoses besides what we've talked about so far? We talked about a little bit about anxiety, but is there anything else that either a traumatic experience leads to or that typically they have a stronger traumatic experience with?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I don't remember actually if we talked about this, but I think perhaps it was you that mentioned substance use disorders. If you don't have a support system and you don't have an effective way to manage what you've been through and it's too overwhelming. Every time that you are confronted with something that relates to your trauma, it is too overwhelming. You want to avoid it. Substances are a really great way to do that. They are going to really help you to do that. So absolutely see that. And anxiety. We already kind of covered that, but yeah, 100%. And I see that anxiety is missed a lot with boys. I noticed that people were more willing to attribute anxiety as a reaction with the girls than with the boys. And I think it's because the boys' anxiety reactions sometimes would be physical, which gets labeled as bad behavior and not anxiety.
Right.
So yes, absolutely that. The conduct disorders, which you mentioned, but I'm not even going to go there because I think if you've labeled it as a trauma, then you've already labeled it. We don't need to go labeling the behavior as something else.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree. I definitely agree with you there. I mean, yeah. Just, yeah.
Sometimes that's all you need.
I know. Except it's just, and then 2020 began. Yes. Joe said my anxiety should have been diagnosed earlier instead of just labeling me ADHD. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. We talked about that a little bit earlier. Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the time there's such a tendency right now to label any behavior that's not perfect as ADHD in a kid. And it's like, My kids are all so different from one another, and they all have their little quirks and everything. But I mean, I've been told that one of my kids, oh, maybe he has ADHD because he was running around too long on the playground. Like, or he just has a lot of energy because you just kept him cooped up for half the day. Come on.
Yes. The number of conversations I've had that have gone exactly like that, especially like
Yes.
my child can't sleep and my child's running around and my child's this, like, well, you've been in quarantine for 2 months. So let's see, have they been able to run around and play as much as usual? Have they had their routine?
Yep.
No, it makes a lot of sense. It just makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, you saw before we started here, but my kid has been getting up until about 9 o'clock usually at night. And normally he goes to bed 7:30, 8 o'clock and is out. But things are different right now. Like I'm working full time, so I can't be making sure that they're outside and playing. Sometimes they're just outside sitting or whatever. So I know he's not burning off all of his energy. So of course he's not tired at his normal time. And of course he's like feeling a little bit, I don't want to say unstable because that sounds awful, but off balance maybe is a better way to put it. Because he's not seeing friends and stuff that he would normally see. So there's things there that some people might just say, "Oh, he's got ADHD," and I'm like, "No, he's just a kid." Like, just let kids be kids and help them grow and learn. And if there actually is a problem, have it diagnosed properly.
We don't have to pathologize everything that our
Yes.
kids do.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. And I'm hearing, I think Cup of J might be Joe that you were saying earlier.
Yes.
Maybe, but I'm hearing Cup of J so loud right now. I
Yep.
see so much of exactly what Cup of J is talking about. 6-year-olds on 3, 4 different psychotropic medications and ADHD all over the show. And sometimes you can even outright ask, like, what kind of worries might this child have? And you'll get
Right.
nothing from caregivers who are really well-meaning and just, I know they're well-meaning. They want, if I could just give my child a pill that would, make them feel better, that would help them in school. I get that that is their desire. They want something to help them, but don't understand that that just doesn't exist. That just
Yeah.
doesn't exist. And then you'll ask the kid, so what kind of things are you worried about? And they'll just list off my family, my mom, my dad, my school, my friends, my dog, this, this, this. Well, there you go. They're worried.
Yeah.
Anyone ever talk to them about what they're worried about?
Right. Right. Absolutely. The early 90s were not kind to kids. You are not kidding. Come to grade schooler with Ritalin. And that's into the early 2000s too. Like that continued. And I think that it continues now, maybe with less medication, just with labeling. But yeah, it's not good. So do you use games or gaming in any of your counseling sessions? And this is back when you were working with kids and families also. And if you do, did you ever get any pushback on that?
So I didn't use video games as such. We straight up weren't allowed to, but we did use a lot of games in our activities, especially with families. So like how we said that like a huge risk factor for traumatization is not having that support. And so many of the kids would have, behaviors or concerns just because of the system that they're living in. Like you might only see me for a week in school, but you're with your family all day. So what's going on in your family? So we would always use games. Some of them would have like very obvious, very targeted to be therapeutic, and some would just be joining activities for the family. Those types of activities, by and large, would go over really well. Sometimes it will be a struggle. If a family even struggles to sit together for 5 minutes, that's going to be hard. But by and large, they would be on board with that. You might have to explain if it wasn't super obvious what you were doing. Like if it wasn't straight up, we're all going to sit around and do this anxiety activity. If it was just a game, sometimes you might have questions like, why are we in therapy and just playing games? And you might
Yeah.
have to maybe explain like, just, that you're building the bond together and just having them be able to connect and share and that kind of thing. The biggest pushback I got in terms of like games was more play therapy for kids. So you would get this from parents and from educators, which again, I understand, in a school, if a child is really very upset and comes down to you and, you can't immediately start asking them questions and trying to process. If they're very, very upset, You have to regulate first. You have to calm down first, which play might help. But if then that same person then just comes down and sees them playing a game, they'll be like, well, why did I send them down? They just come down here to play games. You would hear that a lot. And play therapy is used a lot for kids if they can't really express themselves yet. They might just get something neutral that just helps them to like act out what they're feeling. And I found that so effective. But people find that difficult sometimes if their idea of therapy is just sitting and talking and they see a kid playing with clay, they might not really understand. So that's where I would get questions on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can understand those questions, but hopefully the reactions you got when you explained it were good most of the time.
Usually parents would understand once you explained what you were doing. We're not playing just for the sake of playing.
I need to yell at my daughter really quick. Hang on. Gabby, can you let Bo out? Thank you. Sorry, my dog he comes to me whenever he wants to be let out, and then if I yell at one of the kids, he'll go to the child that I yelled at and be like, "You're supposed to let me out, which is really cute. Joe said, I genuinely believe the Ritalin and its counterparts throughout my childhood caused me actual harm mentally. Yeah, I can definitely see that, especially if you didn't actually have ADHD, because it's like, it doesn't work if you don't actually have ADHD. It does the opposite of whatever is intended. So that's a problem.
Absolutely.
Oh,
and next part.
Go ahead.
No, I just kept on reading the in elementary school, the counselor who let them play is absolutely bang on, because how intimidating is it as a child to sit in a room with a grown-up asking you questions about your feeling? But it's less intimidating if you can play.
Yeah. Yep. I was just going to read the same thing. Like, if you can, focus on a game versus focus on the actual problem, then sometimes you can talk about it a little easier. So that's true for adults too. It was an honest addiction. Could not function without it. Yeah. Yeah. It's sad.
Yeah.
Especially if you got that diagnosis at 3 years old. Like, that's insane.
Yeah. You're still developing for so many years after that. And you're developing whilst being bombarded with psychotropic medication.
Yeah.
And then you've got a physical addiction. But then one thing I worry about so much with drugs, and don't get me wrong, I know some people that it did help so much with, but one thing I worry about is it's just negative reinforcement. If you're a nice person and you take a drug to reduce your anxiety, that just reinforces that you cannot cope with your anxiety. And if you don't have that medicine, just like the white polar bears, it is going to spike. Oh, sorry. That's my phone.
But you're fine. Yeah, no, Joe, that's totally valid. When you have one incident, the first thing they say is, did you take your medicine? Yes. Now I do have people who are close to me where if they're like, man, I just keep falling asleep in the afternoon, I do ask them, hey, did you take your meds this morning? Because I know that they have a history of like forgetting to take their meds or swapping their meds, their nighttime meds and their morning meds. But I would never ask a kid, hey, did you take your medicine today because you're acting up? That seems awful. I would ask the parents that.
What's going on for you that is causing you to behave. You couldn't possibly be distressed in any way. You just need meds.
Yeah. Yeah, I might ask the parents that. Say, hey, did your kid take his meds? He had kind of a hard day. Just wondering if this is, related to that or if it's something different that we need to address. But I wouldn't ask the kid that for sure. Except for allergy medicine. I do ask my kids if they're sneezing allowed to take allergy medicine today, but that's different. When my kid talks about being sleepy during the day, I ask if she went to sleep after she went to bed. That is a good question. All right. This is completely off topic, but it's related to what Bite Mark just said. So I already was telling Joy about this, but my son went to bed tonight and then was up looking for something in his room, then decided that he needed to look in his closet for something, and he found a gecko. It was like this big of a gecko, like no joke, really a big gecko. And I walked in time to see the gecko, and then I didn't see the gecko. So there's a gecko in his room somewhere. I told him not to touch it. Like, if he finds it, I said, don't touch it. Just let it be.
Hello. I don't know what happened. My Discord just decided it was done for a second.
That's okay. You know what? Sometimes it just does that. It's all good. They'll eat the gecko. Geckos are good. You gotta leave the geckos alone. Just let them be. He's really big, though. I was hoping to catch him and at least get a picture, but he squiggled off to the depths of his closet, so I might never see him again. But he was this little, just like tan gecko, like this big, chilling in his
You still
closet.
didn't find it? Yes.
No, I'll find it. I'll find it someday, maybe. Or find the body of it, dried up, lost in his closet, never to be seen again.
No.
His closet's a mess. His whole room is a mess. Discord
he's
just
fallen
needed a
into
nap.
somewhere.
Yeah. It's on his own. So changing topics just a little bit, but I know that this was also one of your kind of areas of expertise. But can you talk a little bit about the career needs for individuals with disabilities? And I think that this is a really big issue and just deserves a lot of kind of space. So just whatever you would like to talk about here would be great.
Oh, I mean, when you say career needs, is there anything in particular you want me to speak to? Is there anything that's come up in your previous conversations that people really notice a lack?
I haven't specifically had anything from the community that's come up as kind of a career need, but are there certain disabilities that have certain needs in a kind of general sense that are a little bit harder to address? Or are there companies that are doing really well at addressing those needs, or needs that have been addressed really well, generally speaking?
You're right, it is a big question. In terms of specific companies, I guess I could say I don't really know. Think that would depend on your individual work environment and who you're working with and who you're working for, and whether you can express what it is you need and whether that is received by your employer. And I also don't know that people think of mental health needs in the workplace in the same way we think of physical health needs. So if people have some mental health needs, I don't know how open employers always are to accommodate those things, even though it is required of them to make reasonable accommodations for their employees. So I don't know whether it is employers as a barrier or policies and policy makers as a barrier. And I think that's also going to depend, I would think, on the field that you're in
Mm-hmm.
to whether your employer is going to be open to hearing that. And even though, I say that, you would think that counseling as a field would be open to that, but I've heard so many people struggling so much, and especially once COVID hit, because what do people value? What do employers value? And that's their profit margin. That's their bottom line. And I experienced that even myself. I'm a professional in this field, and even I found it difficult to get my needs met. And I was saying that I need some time. I need to take a couple of hours off and not being able to get it. So in general, it's that people's needs aren't the priority
Yeah,
in employment.
that
We've
is
come
so true.
some way, we've come some way, we have the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and that requires employers to make accommodations. But I also don't know if people feel empowered enough to request for them when they are needed, and if they would feel support in doing that. I think we are so driven socially, everything is so individualized, and it's about your productivity, and it's about what you can produce, and it's about, are we making enough money, that people's needs don't often factor into that. And I don't think it's about, although it's nice, I don't think it's really about a lot of, like, you'll see like high profile perks sometimes, like they have, like, I don't know, like a pool table for their employees to use, or they have, I don't know, whatever discounts for their employees to use.
Mm-hmm.
But if your employees are feeling overwhelmed or not supported, or if you don't have, if you don't know what's required of you in your job, what you're supposed to be doing, and if you aren't receiving praise, and if you aren't having your needs met, or you don't feel valued, it doesn't matter how much pool you play.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I really answered all of that question, but I think there's a really big system that makes that difficult for people to get their needs met.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, providing a cool perk isn't the same as taking care of your people, honestly. Joe said if my HR person ever tells me that my depression and anxiety would be better if I smile more, I'll fucking throat chop her. Joe, just cheer up. That's it. Just cheer up.
We've had to say this whole time.
You've never just thought of smiling a little more? Just cheer up? Like that's never occurred to you? No, never. Of course not. Honestly, I live my work. They have no clue about mental health and I'm comfortable sharing, but I also just feel like they judge me when I do. That's a big deal. That is a big deal. Like even if you are comfortable saying, hey, I need some support. I need whatever it is that I need. Then the person that you're talking to, it completely depends on who you're talking to. If it's your HR rep, if it's your boss, if it's whoever, like there is that feeling of judgment a lot of the time. Hopefully that'll change eventually, but
Yeah, I've heard some people just in conversation that they feel that the stigma's better, and I do see more discourse and more conversations that's not. We've got a way to go still.
yeah, and I've seen those conversations outside of work for the most part. I mean, I have had some conversations because I am a positive mental health champion with my company, so I have had some mental health conversations.
Yeah.
But it's not like I don't just hear it in the break room. You know what I mean? Like I don't hear about it outside of a specific mental health related conversation. So
I gave book on there, and it was in them, and isn't this also to of other an agency don't even work in mental health? That's where we have to start to care about, have to be open, and they have to model it for them. People call for fulfillments, but could call in sick is going on for you mentally as well. I don't know if you can, but I'm still.
I can hear, it's like I can hear every 2 words or something. I think I'm getting the gist of it though. I'm not able to follow too much lag. Yeah. Like if someone, I think you were saying something about people being able to take mental health days and kind of, especially if you're working in the mental health field, you would think that that's being accepted, but that it's really not. Is that about right? Employee appreciation is not the same thing as employee support. That is so true. Sucks that you got stabbed. They're doing an ice cream social at 1. We do have, well, we did before COVID. We had ice cream socials like every 3rd Thursday or something. We would have an ice cream social on a different floor. But yeah. I mean, and I will say the company that I work for is a great company and they do have things like a positive mental health champion program and they're trying to be really good about it. But it's still kind of you have to find the right people within the company. There's still plenty of people who aren't open about it and who aren't willing to talk about it, who aren't willing to accommodate anything around it. So it's like, I don't know, you have to find the right people. And it's hard to find the right people without just talking about it. So, or I guess it's hard to know who the wrong person is until you're talking to them about it.
Yeah. They don't know if you to hear your voice and provide support, get what you, if what you want, productivity, if all of these are about able to be present, would have good if you were able to support.
Yeah.
Or if that's the day we need to go some serious change.
Why don't we try disconnecting and then reconnecting real quick and see if that helps it.
Let's do it.
All right. We'll be right back.
And that is the interview. I hope you got as much out of that as I did. I want to sit with a couple of things Joy said because they've been rattling around in my head since we recorded this, and I think they deserve a second. The first one is the behavior piece. The idea that a kid running out of a classroom or shutting down completely or picking fights is not necessarily a bad kid making bad choices. They might just be a person who has been through something hard and does not yet have the words for it. Joy said it plainly, behavior is communication. And that doesn't stop being true when you turn 18 either. Adults do it too. We avoid things. We snap at people we love. We stay so busy we never have to sit still and feel anything. We're just better at making it look intentional. The second thing is the DSM conversation. I think a lot of us have been in a position where something genuinely hard happened to us, and we were made to feel like it didn't count because it wasn't dramatic enough. It wasn't the kind of thing that makes it into a textbook. And that invalidation can do its own damage. So hearing a licensed professional say out loud that she disagrees with those narrow definitions, that if it overwhelmed you, it was real, that meant something. I hope it meant something to you as well. And the thought-stopping thing, the white bears. I can't stop thinking about the white bears, which I guess is the point. How many of us have spent years trying to just not think about something, grinding against it, using all of our energy to push it down, and then wondered, why are we exhausted? The whole section of that conversation was a gut punch in the best way. Joy also touched on something towards the end about workplaces and mental health accommodations, and I just want to say, if you're in a job right now where you are struggling and you feel like you can't say anything, you are not alone in that. The gap between what employers are required to do and what actually happens in practice is enormous. That's not your fault, and it's not a personal failing either. The system is just genuinely not set up well. That doesn't mean nothing can change, but it does mean you're not imagining it. If anything from today's episode resonated with you, I would really encourage you to look Joy up. She is Compassion and Consoles on Twitter. She is one of those people who just genuinely is doing the work in her career and in how she shows up online. She's worth a follow. And if you want to support this show, the best things you can do are simple, super simple. Subscribe wherever you're listening right now so you never miss an episode. Leave a review or a comment if your platform lets you do that. That genuinely helps more people find the show on that platform. And then share it with someone you think would connect with it. That really is how this kind of content reaches people who need it. I started Even Tacos Fall Apart because I believe that the more honest we are about the hard stuff, the less alone we feel in it. Mental health is never a tidy topic. It definitely doesn't wrap up neatly. Some days you can do everything right and you can still feel like a mess. But sometimes tacos fall apart and you just eat it with a fork and you keep on going. And I hope that's what you're able to do too. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you in the next episode.